Today, we have a guest, researcher, and the author of live journal articles, Nina Sorokina. The interview will be held in the format of video answers to the questions that the team of Kaleidoscope of Facts research project has previously sent to Nina. Question 1. Nina, what inspired you to begin studying the topic of crystals and energies?
Usually, interest in a specific topic, not only for me, but for humanity as a whole, appears as we become ready to accept certain knowledge and can apply it. Those evolutionary forces that oversee the development of humanity direct the attention of researchers to certain topics at pivotal moments for our civilization. In the past century, our attention was directed towards crystals due to the anticipated revolution in information technologies involving the use of silicon intelligence in computers and mobile phones. Their production would not have been possible without crystalline semiconductors. In the course of studying crystals, a number of their interesting energetic properties became apparent. Scientific discoveries were superimposed on the knowledge that came to us from esoteric traditions of the past. Now, all this knowledge is gradually becoming common knowledge, and I hope we are contributing to it a little. I'm sure that the role of crystals in our lives will become more and more significant as we move from the Iron Age to the Silicon Age.
You studied the work of American physicist Jerry Gallimore and wrote in your work that he explored unknown energy. Could you tell us more about it?
Jerry Gallimore was an American inventor and researcher in the field of crystallography and semiconductors. It is also believed that he partially unraveled the secret of anti-gravity. What made him unique as an individual? Besides being a talented scientist, Gallimore belonged to the type of people we call sensitives or psychics. In other words, he had the ability to see unusual energies, that is, biofield or aura. Objects that we consider inanimate also have a field or aura. This is clearly visible in special photographs taken using the Kirlian method in a variable high-frequency electrical field. We live in a world literally filled with glowing emanations that most of us do not see or feel. The sun is a powerful source of invisible rays in addition to the visible ones we call daylight. And the moon has its own light, although incomparable in strength to the sun. All things on Earth emit light, but it is much weaker. Since crystals are highly ordered structures, their energy field glows most brightly, which in fact can be seen in the Kirlian photos. We do not question the existence of such types of energy as thermal or electric because every human sees the light and feels the heat or electric discharges due to built-in biomonitors within us. Therefore, we consider these types of energy real, while others unreal or non-existent. However, sensitive individuals like Jerry Gallimore, who feel or see energy fields around objects, simply have biomonitors with a broader range. Similar to electricity, the energy creating the aura of objects is real. Jerry Gallimore knew this and dedicated his life to finding a way to measure it, condense it, and modulate it. He called the energy he studied various names: radiation of the form, gravity, or simply unknown energy. Gallimore believed that the concepts of prana and chi from ancient Eastern teachings, as well as terms like organ of Odd, which became known through the research of Carl von Reichenbach and Wilhelm Reich in modern times, all refer to the same phenomena. These are the same unknown energies. Unfortunately, Jerry Gallimore lived a short life, only 49 years. Many of his studies were left unfinished due to a lack of funding. Part of his notes were published during his lifetime, while another part, which he chose not to disclose, was either destroyed or passed on to other researchers after his passing. These studies undoubtedly hold significant potential, and such potential probably motivated me to make them known to those who could continue them.
How can crystals be related to free energy?
Let me use the term non-electromagnetic radiation of the form, or simply radiation of the form, since there are no free energies in nature, just as there are no free breakfasts. Every kind of energy has a source, and any kind of energy is born by disturbing the balance of forces. The question is, at what level is the balance being disturbed, and can such disruption be safe? Crystals do not generate energy out of nowhere. They concentrate and condense it on spatial waves. Imagine a lake with waves moving across it. The wave pattern remains unchanged, and the waves disperse naturally. Now envision placing a lattice in the middle of the lake. When waves go across the lake, passing through the lattice, they will create a vortex around each lattice rod. New small waves and ripples that will begin to interact with each other, overlap, create knots and crests, interfere, and so on. In other words, an entirely new wave pattern will appear on the water, which was not there before the lattice appeared. Now let's imagine that the waves on the lake represent gravitational waves constantly coming from all directions out of space and permeating the entire space. And the lattice is the crystal's molecular structure, which resembles a lattice. So, the crystal changes the pattern of spatial waves, transforming them in some ordered way. Hence, we observe the special glow in crystals in Kirlian photos. This is the radiation of the form. However, not only crystals, but any mass transforms spatial waves, just not in such an ordered way. Therefore, everything, absolutely everything, both living and inanimate objects, glows and has an aura, but their glow varies greatly in intensity. Organic substances have the dimmest aura. Wool and other natural fabrics, wood, clay, and ordinary stones. While metals, especially magnets, and also some crystals, such as quartz or rock crystal, have the brightest glow.
Did Jerry Gallimore succeed in scientifically proving the existence of this energy?
Since the nature of the energies studied by Jerry Gallimore is non-electromagnetic, proving their existence was challenging because it was impossible to measure them in units of already known energies. However, Gallimore managed to experimentally confirm the existence of the radiation of forms by developing a detector for this energy using a special modified crystal. Gallimore obtained such a crystal by simultaneously exposing it to two different radio frequencies from two sides. In other words, he sort of pumped the crystal with energy of certain frequencies. As the stretched molecular lattice of the crystal accumulated tension, it became an extremely sensitive amplifier of gravitational waves emitted by any object. The modified crystal reacted to gravitational radiation in a special way, and the changes occurring with its various characteristics, such as capacitance, resistance, or other physical parameters, could be measured by conventional methods. Gallimore envisioned that such devices could be used, for example, to predict earthquakes. In addition to this device, Gallimore's laboratory used the same modified crystal to produce a concentrated beam of energy, somewhat resembling a laser beam, and he called his device a grazer, a gravitational laser. The penetrating power of the grazer was amazing. After all, the uniqueness of the energy with which Gallimore worked was that it was able to pass through physical barriers, and nothing could shield it. Gallimore claimed that this energy can penetrate even through the thickness of the earth. In another experiment with the modified crystal, Jerry Gallimore claimed to have been able to induce a phenomenon of anti-gravity. More precisely, he repeated the result accidentally discovered in 1927 by two scientists, one Polish and one German, with the last names Kowski and Frost. They worked for a German company, Telefunken. While conducting the experiment, they exposed quartz crystals to different combinations of radio waves and noticed that, under certain frequency combinations, the crystal started losing its transparency while simultaneously increasing in volume. Upon further electromagnetic charging, the crystal eventually lost weight, levitating 2 meters above the laboratory floor and even holding the additional weight of the device, 25 kilograms, to which it was attached. So, 2 scientists accidentally discovered the anti-gravity effect. The report of Kautsky and Frost's experiment with photographs was published in the same year in the German scientific magazine. But later this experiment was declared a fake, and copies of the journal were carefully removed from all libraries. But Gallimore managed to repeat at least the first stage of this experiment, reports of which he published, so they are available. Gallimore mentioned that the key to the success of the Kautsky-Frost experiment was the proper distribution of charge. If they had simply subjected the quartz crystal lattice to a massive force, the crystal would have turned into an amorphous mass. However, since the charge was distributed so that it knocked out charged particles, ions, from the crystal lattice one at a time, these particles stabilized in new positions much further than the previous ones. In essence, the crystal lattice seemed to stretch in all directions like a rubber ball. Quartz increased in volume several times, losing its transparency and resembling a foam-like polystyrene sponge, but it did not disintegrate. As for this experiment, in private discussions, Gallimore mentioned that he managed to repeat the experiment in its entirety and observe the anti-gravity effect, but he never published reports on this part of the experiment.
Please tell us, what is the piezoelectric effect?
This is the effect of converting one type of energy into another by a crystal. You can generate electricity by subjecting quartz to mechanical stress, for example compression, and vice versa. Subjecting a crystal to an electromagnetic field, you can induce deformation.
As of today, science cannot precisely answer the question of what gravity is. In your opinion, what is gravity?
In my experience, the concept of gravity is the easiest to explain using the example of a vortex or funnel. The centripetal force in a vortex, which forms a funnel towards its center, creates a suction or pulling effect. And we remember that Victor Schauberger called this phenomena implosion. Another term for this suction is gravity. The principle of gravitational suction can be observed everywhere in natural phenomena. The movements of whirlpools, cyclones, tornadoes, and so on. Intuitively, we understand its essence because it's well known what happens when you pull the plug out of a bathtub. This force operates at all levels, from galaxies to atoms. The force of gravity creates vortices of stars that we call galaxies. The center of gravity in galaxies are black holes. There is also a large black hole at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, which is the center of gravity. An atom structure closely resembles galaxy structure and is essentially a vortex. In each atom there are also centers of gravity. As Walter Russell, Tesla's friend, stated, I once wrote about him in my article and called him the master of the vortex. So, according to his words, there are no particles in the middle of an atom. There is a hole similar to the eye of a cyclone, akin to a black hole. Matter is created by the swirling of force lines into oncoming vortices, which is the same process we observe in the formation of tornadoes or whirlwinds. An atom is formed by the acceleration of motion around the center of gravity. Gravitational suction is also a process that all life in the universe uses to extract energy from the unified field. To attract a charge, a vortex must be created. In this way, the energy charge is used for biochemical and biophysical processes, including those in a living organism. It is observed, for instance, in the functioning of our DNA molecules, which allow our cells to draw in the energy of life force through them serving as peculiar antennas. Individuals who perceive the human aura claim that energy centers, chakras, also look like vortices or funnels, indicating that the same vortex process is involved here. In a system where centripetal force, i.e. retraction, exceeds centrifugal force, i.e. unwinding, both energy potential and mass increase. We call this process life, and the system is described as living. Therefore, gravity is the foundation of our life itself.
In your story, you mentioned that bioenergy is just one form of gravity. Could you please explain?
A living system has bioenergy because of its ability to draw in and retain a charge or force. Energy doesn't come from anywhere. We get it from our surroundings. The attraction or drawing in of the charge from spatial waves occurs in any organism, both at the micro level, such as the level of DNA, which acts as a mini antenna, and at the level of the entire biofield through vortex-like portals we call chakras. The principle of the operation is the same as that of a planet's gravitational field. It's a vortex or funnel.
Nina, could you please tell us about the anti-gravity effect? Who discovered it?
According to some data, the anti-gravity effect has been utilized by certain biological species on our planet for millions of years. For example, there is a microscopic plankton, single-cell algae, known as Coccolithosaurus. Their shells form the basis of ordinary chalk used in schools, so basically they are familiar to everyone. Russian biologist Sergei Nikolaevich Golubev studied these single-celled algae in the 1980s and concluded that they used toroidal structure of their cells to create anti-gravity effects. According to his calculations, otherwise, the algae simply couldn't stay in the water column, even with the help of the buoyant force of Archimedes. Another example from the world of living nature is the experiments conducted by entomologist Viktor Stepanovich Grebennikov, as reported by the journal Technology Youth at the time. Grebennikov discovered that the elytra of the bronze beetle and some other insects contain special hollow structures that create an anti-gravity effect during flight. Grebennikov also claimed to have manufactured and tested an anti-gravity platform based on an analogue of these hollow structures. However, he concluded that the interaction of the human body with the fields created by the anti-gravity device could be dangerous to health, although it didn't harm the beetles. In the context of the invention of flying devices that used anti-gravity effects, they often mention an American inventor, John Keely. In 1896, he demonstrated his device using sound vibrations of certain frequencies to create an anti-gravity effect. Although Keely left many records and books, his language for describing his experiments was so peculiar that to this day no one has been able to fully decipher them. By the way, his device didn't interest officials in the department where he demonstrated it. In the 1970s, another American physicist, Thomas Townsend Brown, experimented with anti-gravity. By charging objects in a specific way, Townsend Brown made them levitate. Skeptics explained the effect by eon wind, although Brown demonstrated that the same effect could be observed by completely shielding the levitating object from charged particles. However, Brown didn't unveil any specific calculations, and in the following years, he completely disappeared from public eye, working exclusively in a private laboratory. In other words, the results of his experiments were not published. And the physicist Jerry Gallimore, whom I mentioned earlier, discovered that if you apply electromagnetic fields with a specific combination of frequencies to the lattice of a crystal, you can effectively stretch the crystal in all three directions. This leads to the inversion of space-time continuum around it, and the altered crystal becomes a source of anti-gravity. But as I mentioned, Gallimore didn't disclose his calculations either. Perhaps all these individuals understood that humanity is not yet ready for the use of anti-gravity.
In your story, Vensius and Proctor, there are these interesting lines. It will be enough to impart a certain charge to an object from certain types of materials, and it will begin to levitate. It will lose weight. How can this be explained? Where does the mass go?
It should be clarified here that the fact that an object levitates doesn't mean its mass disappears. It means that the gravity is opposed with a greater force directed opposite to gravitational attraction. The same thing happens to a rocket engine during the launch of a rocket. Only in the case of the modified crystal, the oppositely directed impulse, meaning anti-gravity, is created inside the crystal itself, which, in a way, releases the stress to which it was previously subjected by influencing or pumping it with electromagnetic waves.
What possibilities may open up for our society if free energy becomes part of our everyday life?
The possibilities of using gravitational energy in the future are countless. Similar to electricity, it can change the world through inventions that have only been initiated by researchers of our time. There's no doubt about the benefits that humanity can derive from the exploration of gravity, from transporting large objects to interplanetary and interstellar travel. However, careless use of this energy can be fatal for our planet. Any more or less large-scale manipulation of energy fields can alter the balance that sustains our planet in its gravitational field. And this is much more dangerous than even splitting the atom.
Nina, in your story, the phrase "truth conquers all" is mentioned several times. Could you please share why you placed emphasis on this? What does it personally mean to you?
Personally, for me, truth is one of God's names. Some say that God is love. Others say that God is truth. One does not contradict the other because God has many names. The book Vensius and Proctor is written for a wide audience and presented in a pretty accessible artistic form. However, the factual information contained in it, its kernel, was intended for a special type of researchers, those who choose to understand the world through the prism of a scientific, analytical approach. Often such individuals adopt an agnostic position, but are in harmony with the concept of truth. Therefore, I choose this name of God for use in the book in full agreement with the Sufi saying, "Speak with everyone in their language."
There is an expression that for a believer, God is in the beginning, and for a researcher, in the end. Could you comment on this?
I believe that the division between the spiritual and the scientific, as well as a dominance of positivism in the public consciousness, is a temporary phenomenon. In my opinion, in the future, there will be a synthesis of two worldviews that now seem to be opposites into a completely new vision of the world. It will be enriched by both modern scientific knowledge and understanding of the unity of all things existing. We hope that our efforts will contribute, even if only slightly, to bringing about this future, because truth conquers all.